All right, so your exponential test is going to include both your exponent laws and exponential functions. So when we're reviewing our exponent laws, we have PEMDAS to help us remember the rules. Parentheses means we multiply the exponents. When we're multiplying, we add the exponents. When we divide, we subtract the exponents. But what about negative exponents? Anytime you have a negative exponent, it's unhappy. It wants to move. So this y negative 4 is going to become y positive 4 when we move it to the bottom. Same with the z negative 3. It becomes z positive 3 when we move it to the bottom. On the bottom, we have a y negative 3 that becomes a y positive 3 when we move it to the top. I'm going to use expansion because when in doubt, expand it out. So we have a 2. X to the 4th means x 4 times. Y to the 3rd means y 3 times. On the bottom, we have a 3. We have x 2 times. We have z 4 times. Y 4 times. And then z 3 times. We can cross off whatever's the same on the top and the bottom. So an x, an x, an x, an x. A y, a y, a y, a y, a y. And nothing else can cross off. So we're left with 2, and then an x squared on the top because there's 2 x's. On the bottom we have a 3. There's a y, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So z to the 7th. So your answer is A. If you were using your exponent laws, on top we have a 2x4, y3. So x4 and an x2, you have more x's on top. When you divide, you subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2. With our y's, we have a y3 and a y4. There's more on the bottom. 4 minus 3 is 1. For our z's, we have z4 on the bottom and z3 on the bottom. So now you're multiplying, so you add. 4 plus 3 is 7. Which of the following function shows an initial amount? Your initial amount is your y-intercept. So it means it's starting at 15. And then doubling. Doubling means times 2 to the x. So it's going to be that b value. What is the rate of growth for this exponential function? So guys, this means you're taking your y2 divided by your y1. What is it that you're multiplying by? So if we take 12 divided by 4, we get 3. If we take 36 divided by 12, you get 3. Your rate is 3 each time. You could also use stat. And then you do stat, right, 0 because it's exponential. Your a value is 4. Your b value is 3. So your rate is the second number. Okay, for this function, what does the 300 represent? Just like we talked about in number 2, this is your initial value or your starting point. What is the domain of the function? Dealer. Domain is your dealer. We also have doctor. His name is XY. So domain means X. So you could automatically eliminate C because that's got a Y. And left. This has an arrow. It's going to keep going to the left. And this has an arrow. It's going to keep going to the right. So your domain is all real numbers. When we're talking about range, this is your robot, okay? So we're looking for the bottom. Remember, the exponential functions have asymptotes, right? Because they have curves, so they have an asymptote. And your asymptote is the bottom here at y equals 0. But you also can't touch the asymptote. So your bottom is at 0, but it doesn't touch it. So it's less 0, less than, not equal to y. Our top has an arrow, so it's going to keep going. So when we look at our answer choices, it's going to be D. The table represents an exponential function. Find f of 5. That means it wants us to find the 5th term. I'm going to write my equation to help me. So my initial value is 1. And then to find the rate, we're going to take y2 divided by y1. So 4 divided by 1, which is 4. So times 4 to the x. So if I plug this in my calculator, 1 times 4 to the x, and we're looking for where the x is 5. Second window. Where the x is 5, it's 1024. If you don't have a calculator at home, you could just find the rate and continue your table on. If we're multiplying times 4 each time, 64 times 4 is 256. 256 times 4 is 1024. So either way. Which of the equations best represents the table? So we need our initial value, where it's starting when the x is 0. So y equals 36. And then how is it changing each time? So y2 divided by y1. So we can take 108 divided by 36. 108 divided by 36, which is 3. So times 3 to the x. You also know that this is growth, so your rate has to be greater than 1. So it couldn't be C and it couldn't be D, and your answer is B. You could also plug these in y equals 36 times 3 to the x. And let's see if that table matches. At 0, we have 36. Negative 1, it was 12. Negative 2, it was 4. All of my tables match. All right, the value of a car is $15,000. That's your initial value. And it depreciates. So this means it's going down. We're going to have subtraction. And they're giving us a percent. This is 0.08. So when we're depreciating by a percent, we're comparing it to the number 1. So our equation is going to be 15,000 times 1 minus 0.08 to the x. So if I type this in, and I am looking at 1, it's 13,800. At 2, it's 12,696. At 3, it's 11,680. And then 10,746. So this is your answer. The graph represents the decrease of the population of bacteria over time. Which inequality best represents the range of the situation? It's different from the last one because we're dealing with time and bacteria. You can't have negative time in a situation. You can't have anything over here. So when we're talking range, bottom to top, we know the bottom is still my asymptote at 0. But now this does have a top because it stops right here because it can't go backwards in time. So my top is right there at 150. So make sure you pay attention as to whether it's a situation or it's just a graph. Which represents exponential decay? So because it's exponential, we know it has curves. And because it's decay, it's going down. So that's curved up. That's curved both directions. That's a straight line. So it's this one, which is D. Suppose a culture of bacteria begins with 5,000 cells. So my initial value is 5,000. And dies by 30% each year. So they're dying, it's decreasing, we're comparing it to 1 minus, and 30% is 0.30. So your answer is A. Which sentence best describes this sequence? So we know it's starting with 2. Starting with 2, starting with 128, starting with 128, starting with 2. Okay? And then is it 4 more, meaning is it adding 4 each time? No, it's 4 times the term. So here B. What are the first 4 terms of a geometric sequence? Okay, that means you're multiplying by a common ratio of 2. That means you're multiplying by 2 each time. First term is 6. So 6 times 2 is 12 times 2 is 24, times 2 is 48. Write the explicit formula for the geometric sequence. Okay, that means you're multiplying. So where does it start? It starts at 162. And then to find your rate, you take y2 divided by y1. So 108 divided by 162. Oops. Math, enter, enter. So it's 2/3 is my rate to the n minus 1. So it starts at 162 times 2/3 to the n minus 1. Perfect. The area of a rectangle is this. The length is this. So area is normally length times width, but they want us to find the width. So I'm going to divide. I'm going to take this 20, x to the 7th, y to the 5th, divided by 4, x to the 3rd, y squared. 20 divided by 4 is 5, so I know it can't be those two answer choices. And you could either use expansion, so 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y's, over 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You cross off what's in common. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 x's and 1, 2, 3 y's. We have a system of equations. What is the solution? The solution is the point of intersection. These two equations are never going to cross, so there is no solution. Find the slope of the line that passes through 19, negative 2, and negative 11, 10. I'm going to use stat. So stat, enter. We have 19 and negative 11 as my x values, negative 2 and 10 as my y values. Because it's slope, I know I'm going to do stat right 4. So my slope, my m value is negative 0.4. To turn it into a fraction, negative 0.4, math, enter, enter, and it's negative 2/5. Factor. Now, if you're trying to find one factor, it needs the same x-intercept. If it's giving you both factors, the same equation. So I could put x squared plus 7x minus 30 in y1. And let's put our factors, x plus 10, x minus 7. And they need to be exactly the same. Those are not. Okay, x plus 10, x plus 3. Nope. X plus 10, x minus 3, just because I didn't want to change the plus sign. Yes, those are exactly the same. If I was doing it by hand, you use your box, your first term, x squared, your last term, negative 30. You multiply across, so 1 times negative 30 is negative 30, and they need to add to give you 7. I've got 1, negative 30, 2, negative 15, 3, negative 10. I could switch it. I could do 30, negative 1, 15, negative 2, 10, negative 3. So 10x, negative 3x, those would add to give me 7. This breaks into x and x. Pull out the negative, they both divide by 3, and those both divide by 10. So your factors are x plus 10 and x minus 3. Leslie car travels about 25 miles per gallon, 25x. All right, so you've got your equation, and they're telling us that the max amount of gas they could have in there would be 14, and the least amount of gas would be 0. And they want us to figure out what the possible range is. So if I use my equation, y equals 25x, 0 matches up with 0, 14 matches up with 350. So your range or y values is 0 to 350. Remember, you have Dr. XY, so the range had to be y. You could have eliminated D to begin with. And your tank can't hold more than 14 gallons, so that's as far as they could go in their car. Determine the first 3 terms of the sequence. This tells you that it starts at -3. Your first term is -3. And this is recursion formula. It tells you that you're just multiplying by 3 each time. So do times 3 to get -9, times 3 to get -27.